RFK Jr. had his committee hearing in front of Congress, and now Tulsi Gabbard has had her hearing. And I don't think it went any better for Tulsi Gabbard in the sense that the way that she was treated in that room was ridiculous. But I do think that Tulsi was able to handle herself a little bit better than RFK. I felt like she was very composed. And another thing that I noticed is that when she was interrupted, she continued to talk. At one point, she said, "Let me speak." Let me speak. So Tulsi can be good, in my opinion, usually like on one or two issues, I will agree with her with. I don't agree with Tulsi Gabbard, making the decision to nod her head, give the nod for U.S. surveillance. She was against that. She championed against it. And, she had to walk it back, I guess, in order to be still considered for this position in Trump's cabinet. And I don't like that. But this particular hearing with Tulsi Gabbard, I feel like, again, these representatives are showing you who they are, right? So like these Congress members, they're showing you that they really don't want anyone in there that is going to have a different opinion than what the State Department wants you to have. Like, don't get me wrong, when it comes to Israel, she's totally in lockstep with that, with the State Department narrative, right? She said that these kids in the United States are being radicalized by radical Islam. And she said some things that, in my opinion, appear to be Islamophobic as well. That being said, I think when it came to this particular discussion about Edward Snowden, I think she handled herself very well. I want to start with part of this opening statement. I want you to listen to what she said at the very end of her opening statement.
Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate Al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an Al-Qaeda offshoot, HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members.
So this is Tulsi Gabbard letting them know right from the very beginning during her opening statement that she is not anyone's puppet. She's like, stop calling me these names, right? And I told you guys before, even if you said that you wanted peace, you wanted the war in Ukraine to end, people started smearing you as Putin puppets, right? Like a number of us got attacked that way. It's just ridiculous. So they've been doing this to Tulsi Gabbard for quite some time, especially when it comes to Assad. Tulsi has been very vocal and said that she's against these regime change wars. Now, again, all this goes out the door when it comes to Israel, right? Because she's not going to acknowledge what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. She's not going to acknowledge the oppression, the occupation, any of that. So let's be clear, she's not consistent across the board when she calls out a lot of these issues, in particular in the Middle East. But I did think that she started off very strong to let them know that she is not going to be referred to as a puppet, and that just because she has a different opinion or a different, outlook when it comes to these particular issues, that doesn't give them the right to smear her in the way that they have been doing for quite some time. I also noticed something else. She's wearing all white again. Tulsi Gabbard wore all white when she was on the debate stage and she was debating Kamala Harris. Remember that knockout punch when she said that Kamala Harris laughed about, locking up people for marijuana, and she just basically threw her whole record out there on the stage and everything. So I wonder if Tulsi, when she wears all white, if she's trying to send a message, because here's the thing, colors do matter, right? Like red is would not be a good color to wear to something like this. They're already going to, target you in such a way. Red can come off as very defensive. Blue can come across as calm, but she's probably not going to wear all blue because she used to be a Democrat. She's not anymore. Just running this through my head. But white is supposed to signify, angelic, purity, like that type of thing, innocence. And I wonder if she purposefully chose white because of that. So just keep that in mind. If Tulsi was wearing a different color, I wonder if people may have a different opinion, because now she doesn't look like the aggressive one. And I don't think that she was. They were. So they even look 10 times worse, because people will look at her and be like, why are you yelling at this woman? What is wrong with you guys? Brown Bunny said, like a virgin touched for the very first time.
Democrat senators in the past resorted to anti-Christian bigotry against some of President Trump's judicial nominees like Amy Coney Barrett and Brian Boucher. I condemn those actions as a Democrat in Congress at the time, as religious bigotry must be thoroughly condemned by all of us, no matter the religion. Unfortunately, there are some Democrat senators who still don't understand the principle of freedom of religion and Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Unfortunately, they're once again using the religious bigotry card, but this time trying to foment religious bigotry against Hindus and Hinduism. If anyone is sincerely interested in knowing more about my own personal spiritual path of Hinduism, I welcome you to go to my account on X, where I'll share more on this topic.
Her religion shouldn't even matter. I said this too when Barack Obama was president. Who cares what religion he is freedom of religion supposed to be? We're supposed to have freedom of religion in this country, but here we are.
If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will continue to live by the oath that I have sworn at least 8 times in my life, both in uniform and as a member of Congress. I will support and defend our God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so that was Tulsi Gabbard's towards the end of her opening statement, and now we're going to get to the point where we open the floodgates. Okay, because one of the topics, as I'm sure you can imagine, that was mentioned was Edward Snowden, and so we have to get to that, and let's go ahead and dive right in.
Thank you. Colleagues, I will lead by example and yield back 1 minute of my time and recognize the Vice Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is a first. Ms. Gabbard, let me be clear, at least in my views. I salute your service to our country, but I have serious doubts about your judgment. And those are some of the areas that I want to pursue. First, until you were nominated by the president to be the DNI, you consistently praised the actions of Edward Snowden.
Here we go.
Some who, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation, and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Every member of this committee supports the rights of legal whistleblowers. But Edward Snowden isn't a whistleblower. And in this case, I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotist.
Oh, Sorry, I don't know what happened there, folks.
Closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotist.
Oh, I hate how it does this. Sorry, guys. Let me reset this again. Okie doke. Let's try this again. We'll jump forward.
I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotistical serial liar and traitor who, quote, deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life. Ms. Gabbard, a simple yes or no question. Do you still...
Pause. So is the problem whether or not Edward Snowden was a whistleblower or the fact that he had an ego? Like what? Didn't Edward Snowden reveal secrets? Didn't he reveal secrets about what national, what intelligence was doing? That they were spying on people against their will? He blew the lid off that, right? Glenn Greenwald interviewed Edward Snowden, and Edward Snowden told us what we should have been told, which is that you should know that. You should know that if you open up your laptop, that your little webcam there, that someone could be watching you that you don't want to watch you. Because we have a right to privacy in this country. And by doing that, you are invading people's privacy. So I think what Edward Snowden did is not only just noble, but he did what he should have done, telling people the truth about what our government was doing. So I get bothered when people like Warner say, oh, no, well, he was not a whistleblower. Yes, he was. Just because he blew something that you didn't want people to know or you didn't think should have been blown doesn't mean he wasn't a whistleblower. They're opening the floodgates, folks.
Think Edward Snowden is brave?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it. There would have been opportunities for him to come to you on this committee or seek out the IG to release that information. The fact is, he also, even as he broke the law, released information that exposed egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that are happening within our government that led to serious reforms that Congress undertook.
Chairman, we got 5 minutes.
Did you notice what she did? Notice how when he was interrupting her, she continued to talk. And not only that, she remained calm. This is something I think that RFK didn't do the best job of during his hearing. He didn't remain as calm. Whereas Tulsi, I think she has a lot of practice doing this. Like she knew, okay, whatever I do, I probably should not get my emotions all riled up. So let me remain calm. That way they end up looking like the jackass. And that's what happened. Warner just looked absolutely ridiculous. So let's talk about breaking the law and doing what's right. If there is a law that is in place that prevent you from doing what's right, should you not break it? Think about that for a second. Because there have been many laws that have been broken, but they were doing what's right. If you go back to the civil rights movement, all the marches, and remember the sit-ins at the diners, where they weren't supposed to sit there. They weren't supposed to do that. They broke the law. But I would say they were doing what was right. MLK got his head bashed in, dogs sicked on him. They were like, you broke the law because you're in a section you're not supposed to be in. That was the law. There were Jim Crow laws, but I would still say they were doing what was right. So the question should be, is the law always right? Think about that for a second. This guy is a doozy.
So I take your answer, and these are your quotes. Brave, please join my bipartisan legislation calling for charges to be dropped against him. Do you disagree that legislation was not appropriate? Do you believe he is brave or not?
Edward Snowden broke the law. He also released information
we agree that Edward Snowden
that
broke
exposed the United States government's illegal
your
programs.
legislation and your words are still your beliefs? Yes or no?
Pause. So what she just did there, which I think is ever so important, is that Tulsi Gabbard just showed you that, yes, Edward Snowden broke the law, but he revealed illegal activity that the U.S. government was doing. The U.S. government was also breaking the law. So why are they pretending like we need to call out what Edward Snowden did, but we're not going to call it the fact that the U.S. government also broke the law? These are the things that people need to pay close attention to. So he doesn't want her to finish what she said, or he doesn't want you to pay attention to what she said. So he comes in to interrupt. That's the distraction. Edward Snowden should be allowed to return back to the United States, in my opinion. Now, I don't know if it would be the best thing for him for his safety, but I would consider what Edward Snowden did to be a brave thing. I think he should be allowed to come back home. And not just him, other people too. Assad Shakur, you should be able to come back home. What kind of country is this? What are we doing? But you know, Warner, he wants his moment in the spotlight. So here we go.
I agree that Edward Snowden
that
broke the
exposed
law.
the United States
Asking your
government's
question whether
illegal
your
programs.
legislation and your words are still your beliefs. Yes or no, please.
I'm making myself very clear. Edward
Ma'am.
Snowden broke the law. He released information about the United States
Ma'am,
government's
I've got other issues to
illegal
raise.
activities.
Ma'am,
If I may just finish my thoughts, Senator. In this role that I've been nominated for, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will be responsible for protecting our nation's secrets. And I have 4 immediate steps
ask for
that I
additional
would
time.
take to
Chairman.
prevent another Snowden-like leak.
Ma'am, I would simply ask you again. I don't think you're going to answer. I agree with Tom Cotton. He's a traitor. You, for years, until you got chosen by President Trump, have celebrated this guy as brave. You've called for him to be pardoned, for his charges to be dropped. I cannot imagine a director of national intelligence that would say that kind of behavior is okay.
Didn't Joe Biden just pardon Hunter Biden? Didn't that pardon go all the way back to 2014, which would include Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma in Ukraine? So how are you gonna call out someone saying that Edward Snowden should be pardoned when you had the former president pardon his son, some of his other crazy ass family members too? So I don't think when we talk about pardons, let's be clear here. But Warren, Mr. Warner, is just being very performative. It reminds me that time when Cory Booker was during one of the hearings and Cory Booker said, "I am Spartacus," that "I am Spartacus" moment. That's what he wants. He wants attention. Mr. Warner's like, now is my turn to be on TV. I'm not AOC or any of these other politicians. So now is my moment to get that shine. And the reality is, I think a lot of Americans are more likely to side with Tulsi Gabbard when it comes to Edward Snowden than Mr. Warner. Because a lot of people don't trust the government. And the reason why some people don't trust the government is because you guys have been spying on people against their will.
How would we maintain the trust of the IC and the contractors who work for it? How would we maintain the trust of our Five Eye partners? I find it very troubling. Let me move to 702. I know other members are going to raise this. Remember, the 702 is critical to our national security. 60% of the president's daily brief, 60% of the information President Trump gets every day in a PDB will come from this. You've had a long history of opposing 702. Many members of Congress have. But one of the things you actually done that not many have is not to reform it, but you actually said you wanted to repeal it. But now, whether it's confirmation conversion or whatever, you call 702 vital. And I'm quoting, because of significant FISA reforms have been enacted since you left Congress. Ms. Gabbard, what are the reforms that have led you to now support 702?
In the short time that I have, Senator, I will just note that My actions in legislation in Congress were done to draw attention to the egregious civil liberties violations that were occurring at that time.
Ms. Gabbard,
Some of
Ms.
the-
Gabbard, I ask you a question. Please give me the courtesy of responding. You said the reforms now make you supportive. What can you cite? Which reforms?
There are a number of reforms to include
In the new
getting
bill,
rid
in the new law, right?
that all of you and your
Ms.
wisdom.
Gabbard, my time is getting short. But I got to just tell you, after the reforms were passed into law in April of 24, you went on Joe Rogan's podcast in May.
Of course, it always goes back to Joe Rogan. Does everybody see what's happening here? It always goes back to you were on Joe Rogan's podcast, and that's why. Oh, my God.
The bill is now law. And you said, quote, this bill took an already bad problem and made it many, many times worse. Again, in my mind, this is a question of judgment. 702 is critical. I appreciate this late conversion, but I'm not sure I buy it because you've had such a consistent position. Again, I know my colleague's going to raise these, but rather than standing up to dictators like Putin and Assad, you've sometimes amplified his talking points. I mean, I just do not understand how you can blame NATO for Putin's brutal invasion.
Because it is connected to NATO. So does everybody see? What did Tulsi Gabbard say at the end of her opening statement? She said she is not Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, anybody else's puppet, that she's her own woman, that she's a free thinking person. That's what she said right at the beginning, because she knew what they were going to say. And Mr. Warner, of course, walks right into it. Now, the 702 part, I will admit, this is one of the things that I did want to address. Remember, I told you guys I was not happy about her flipping on that, because that she did have a firm position about that, but she did flip on that because I guess she felt it would help her in trying to win the votes for this position, right? Because this is an intelligence position. So I didn't like that. Don't agree with it. I really don't agree with Tulsi Gabbard on much, to be honest, but I do agree with her about NATO. Yeah. Provoking Russia for this war. I do agree with her about that. I do agree with her with ending regime change wars. So it seems like he's just bouncing around to the typical things that we all knew they were going to use to throw at her, which she already called out. She got the upper hand because at the end of her opening statement, she already basically told them what they were going to say about her. It's just like that scene in 8 Mile. You remember 8 Mile, the movie with Eminem? Remember towards the end when they were freestyling that, freestyle competition. And I think the last rhyme that Eminem did, he said, "I know everything that you are going to say about me." So Eminem called out himself. He said, "I am broke. I am a bum. I do live in a trailer with my mom." He said all of those things about himself. So when he passed the mic over to his competitor, he had nothing to say. So it was actually smart what she did at the end of the opening statement when she said, "This is not who I am. I know what you're going to say about me." And this is exactly what he's doing because he has nothing else to do. What are you going to do?
Of Ukraine. And when Assad used chemical weapons against his own people, you didn't condemn him. I can go through all the quotes. You actually questioned Americans' intelligence. Now, you mentioned a lot about trust. And one of the things that I'm so proud on this committee is my friend Senator Verse said, we always follow the truth. I say on this committee, the most valuable work I do in this, and we have a bipartisan approach to intelligence. I think we have worked to try to keep the intelligence community and earn their trust, and frankly, earn the trust of the American people. But I respectfully, ma'am, I just don't believe on your judgment and credibility issues that this is the appropriate role that you should take going forward.
Who has a worse chance of getting in? RFK or Tulsi? I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. You can tell me in the chat. Obviously, we knew he wasn't going to be going towards, for her anyway. But with the Tulsi thing, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can answer that question myself. What are you guys saying here? Who has a harder chance to get in? RFK, Tulsi, RFK, Tulsi, RFK. Wow, this is it's gonna be tough. I think it's gonna be tough. Oh boy, it's almost even now. Oh my gosh, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But you guys know they weren't feeling her, right? You knew they weren't going to be feeling her anyway. And the Democrats definitely aren't going to be feeling her because she left the Democratic Party and she moved over to the Republican Party. So keep that in mind too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gabbard, Edward Snowden does stand out as having done particularly grave harm to our national security by revealing top secret information, including sensitive sources and methods, thus jeopardizing agents in the field. So let me ask you a question. If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
Why is Susan Collins speaking this way? I don't know if everyone's familiar with her, but she is a senator from Maine. She's Republican, but she's a little bit more moderate Republican, similar to Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker was our former governor here in Massachusetts, but I don't remember her speaking like this. So I don't know what's going on. It sounds like something is a little... Rago said Miss Collins is a fake Republican. Her voice sounds a little shaky. I don't know if there's something going on or I don't know. Very weird.
Thank you for the question, Senator Collins. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
So the answer is no. Is
Correct.
that correct? In 2020, you introduced the Protect Brave Whistleblowers Act, which would amend the Espionage Act to make it more difficult to prosecute individuals who reveal classified information. In particular, the bill would allow individuals to disclose even top secret information as long as it's not done with the specific intent to injure the United States or advantage any foreign nation. Your bill would also have created an affirmative defense if public disclosure of classified information were made for several reasons, one of which was to expose gross waste of funds. I strongly oppose this legislation, which would hamper our ability to prosecute people who give our adversaries classified information. So let me ask you this, Ms. Gabbard, do you still support providing individuals who have access to top secret information with the ability to make their own decisions regarding whether that information should be publicly disclosed, even though disclosure may cause tremendous harm to our country or our allies?
Senator, we cannot and should not have individual vigilantes within the intelligence community making their own decisions about how and where and when to expose our nation's secrets. The intent of the legislation that you have pointed out was pointed towards ensuring due process for those who are charged under the Espionage Act in a court of law. This is a law that has been abused in some cases and used for political purposes. President Obama charged more people under the Espionage Act than all other presidents combined. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, My sole focus and goal would be our nation's security, which includes ensuring the security of our nation's secrets. And I would work to make sure that we don't have any disclosures or vigilantes taking it upon themselves. There are numerous legal paths that will protect this information for those who feel they have concerns. And I look forward to working with you and this committee on making sure that those protections are known by every single person in the workforce and effectively implemented.
So there was something that she said there that I thought was very interesting, what more people need to pay attention to, is about some of the things that happened under Barack Obama's administration, which people kind of just seem to forget about because it's been so many years ago. But espionage, right? Now, that's a really dangerous thing. This is one of the things that we pointed to about Julian Assange. And we were saying, like, of course, free Julian Assange. Like, we cannot have a journalist, go down for something like that, go down for espionage, because, again, that could affect all of these other journalists, right? The ones that are not talking heads for the State Department. And I think that's important that she said that, because it is a reminder to people, because as much as we do point fingers at what Donald Trump has done or what Donald Trump is doing, I think it is important for people to remember a lot of the freedoms that were taken away under Barack Obama's presidency too, which oftentimes is not stated. Right. So just keep that in mind. We have a little bit more I want to show here.
You do not support allowing individuals to make their own decisions without authorization to disclose secret information, classified
Yes,
information.
and I believe we have the legal structure in place for those who have concerns to address them.
As you know, there has been speculation in the press that you met with Hezbollah, a terrorist organization affiliated with Iran.
Oh,
Have
boy.
you ever knowingly met with any members, leaders, or affiliates of Hezbollah?
No, and it is an absurd accusation.
It was really weird that they used that against Tulsi, because we all know just how pro-Israel Tulsi is. We all know, again, I've called this out multiple times, the Islamophobia that has come from her, the way that she has talked about the Palestinian people. And she said, give Israel everything they need, go in now, take them out, yada, yada, etc. She's been one of the most vocal pro-Israel people. She has spoken at AIPAC conferences. She continues to do that even more today. So I don't know why Susan Collins even thought that one of her, of all people, right? Like, neither her or RFK, like, would you think about asking them that or even believe that? Because they're staunch Zionists. So that one really threw me for a loop. She throwing in all kind of things, It's like, you guys want to mention Assad? It's like, oh, she already mentioned Assad in her opening statement, so let's throw in the Hezbollah thing too. Like, just throwing in all types of things.
Let me ask you one final question in the short time we have left. With Hamas, ISIS-K, the Houthis, all the Iranian proxies in Syria and Iraq, Yemen, and Al-Qaeda all posing general resurgences in the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia, I'm alarmed at the lack of focus by the IC on this threat to our safety. We don't want to have to call you back to this room after a terrorist attack and ask, how did the IC miss this? Great power competition, China, Russia, definitely pose threats to our country, but the terrorist threat is arguably the most imminent threat, according to former FBI Director Chris Wray. If confirmed, what would be your strategy to refocus the IC on the terrorist threat to our country and to Americans abroad?
This woman cannot be this unintelligent. She cannot be this unintelligent. I can understand if instead of Tulsi Gabbard sitting in that chair, if it was someone who was pro Gaza, pro Palestinian, but Tulsi is the exact opposite of that. So the way that Susan Collins kind of framed that, almost as though if she has this impression that Tulsi Gabbard is pro-Palestinian or pro for the Houthis or whatever, I think she sees all these groups as one thing when they're not all one thing. It's almost like Susan Collins thinks that because Tulsi Gabbard said the things that she said about Assad and Syria, that Tulsi feels the same way about Hamas, which she doesn't, which anyone who's been paying attention from the statements of Tulsi Gabbard, not even since October 7th, but even prior to October 7th, would know that that is ridiculous. She's very pro-Israel, very Israel first. Like, I just say these people can't be this unintelligent. Like, where have you been? How is it that we know more about this and you're sitting right there in Congress? You guys don't know? We're going to need to give Susan Collins a martini.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with your assessment. And this speaks to the need for the ODNI to exist, to redirect those resources, identifying the gaps in intelligence so that we are able to get ahead of these threats instead of coming around after the fact and trying to assess why did we not know about this sooner so that we could have taken action to prevent it.
Thank you.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr.
So those are just some of the discussions that happened during Tulsi Gabbard's hearing. And I just tell you, every time I watch one of these hearings, I just ask myself, is Congress this stupid? Like seriously. And it's not just Tulsi Gabbard. It's not just RFK. It's all of these hearings. I'm just like, do you guys know anything about the people that you're actually talking to or you're trying to confirm at this point in time? It's really interesting, crazy, crazy stuff. But I will say this. I think that, again, I don't agree with Tulsi Gabbard on most things, right? But I do think that she is correct, obviously, when she says that NATO provoked the war in Russia. I agree with that, 100% true. I strongly disagree with her when it comes to Israel, Gaza, etc., the Islamophobia, etc., all of those things. I agree with her on Snowden. And I think one point that I do want to mention here, now she does flip-flop. And that's the question that people do need to ask about Tulsi, because I've seen her do this over the years. She'll have one position on the issue and then she'll flip-flop, like she's flip-flopped on the 702. Like, I consider Tulsi Gabbard to be an opportunist. And this is what I've said for a long time. She's doing what she needs to do to get where she want to get in her career. Right now, this is a point I have to address because Aaron Mate pointed this up, and I want people to seriously pay attention to this. Something that Warner said. Warner claims that Snowden fled to Russia. No, the Obama administration canceled his passport as he was seeking asylum elsewhere, forcing him to stay in Russia while in transit there. If Warner doesn't like that Snowden got stranded in Russia, he should take it up with the Obama administration. And I cannot stress this enough. A lot of people get this position incredibly wrong. It's similar to the situation with Tara Reade. When Tara Reade was stuck in Russia, people were saying, oh, she took off and fled to Russia. No, she was there. She was already there promoting her book. Then she received word from Congress that if she came back to the US, she would be detained. And people were leaving that part out. I know, because I've interviewed her about this multiple times. People were leaving that part of the story out. People get this wrong with Edward Snowden too. Everybody's like, he jumped on a plane and he took off and fled to Russia. He was already there. It was Obama who would not let him come back. And he hasn't been back since. So you got to get these things straight. Again, like I said, it points to something, though, that we said earlier, not just about them opening the floodgates, but Jesus Christ, Congress is incredibly stupid. Jeez. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.